CTN, the Energy Network. CTN, the Energy Network.
Hello, I'm Patrick Sweeney, Executive Vice President of Caliper. Today I'm going to be speaking with you about coaching for success, how to develop your next top performer. I've been looking so forward to sharing with you some of the ways you can hire and develop people who are driven to succeed. But before I share with you two fundamental keys to coaching for success, I need to tell you that none of this advice will work if one of two people is not ready, you and the person you're trying to coach. And that can account for a very complicated formula. Both of you need to be open, flexible, intrigued by solving problems, self-aware, willing to listen and reflect, and most importantly, both of you need to be convinced that the change you want to create is worth everything it'll take to bring it about. Because change is not easy. Let me be more honest. Change is very hard. We often do everything we can to avoid changing. It means work and leaving our comfort zone. And the real motivation to change has to come from within. Without a fundamental desire, make that a need to change, nothing will change, at least for very long. And the best coaching in the world will fall on deaf ears. As we focus on coaching, it begs the question, does anybody really change? I'm not going to be coy. Let me cut to the chase here. I'll tell you what I really believe. I believe that we can all change in huge ways if we really want to. But I've also come to believe that as managers, it is not our jobs to try to change people. Rather, it is our job to help them realize their potential. Those are two very different things. To change, we have to want to. Let me just emphasize, change is not easy. It's very uncomfortable. Most of us don't change unless our backs are up against the wall. Often we only change after we've been hurting so much in some way, and we have to realize that we're going to have to hurt some more because changing can be very painful. It starts with understanding that there's a gap between ourselves and where we need to go. None of this is easy. But we also have to realize that understanding is just the starting point. We need to bridge the gap between understanding and doing. Most coaching is based on a huge and false assumption that if people understand, they will do the right thing. But why do so many people who have had a triple bypass operation a year later resume their old eating habits? If we're not going to change when something is life-threatening, then why are we going to change one of our habits at work just because our boss wants us to? In order for coaching to stick, it requires desire, understanding, commitment, support, being open to feedback, and constant follow-up. That's a pretty tall order. And not everyone can handle it or even wants to. This brings us to the first of our two fundamental keys to coaching for success, surrounding yourself with the right people. The second, which I'll get to shortly, is establishing a real connection between them and you. When we asked over 500 company presidents, what is the best part and what's the worst part of being a leader, surrounding yourself with the right people was at the top of both categories. Surrounding yourself with the right people. It's the best part and the worst part of being a leader. Now, at first that might sound contradictory, but what they're telling us is that it's an either-or. When it doesn't work, it's the worst part of being a leader. It keeps us up at nights worrying. It makes us fill in for others and forces us to make some very tough decisions about letting people go or spending a lot of time trying to develop people who aren't really cut out for their jobs. And worst of all, it keeps you from doing what you're best at. In another survey, we asked over 500 managers, who do you spend most of your time with? Your top performers, your average performers, or your poor performers? Do you know what they answered? Any ideas? Nearly 2/3 of the managers we asked said they were spending most of their time with poor performers. Sounds like most people here can relate to that. At Caliper, we've discovered that 55% of the people currently working would be doing themselves, their company, and certainly those of us who are unfortunate enough to come in contact with them, a favor if they just gracefully bowed out and pursued an entirely different profession. For more than half the people currently working, their favorite feeling is when the whistle blows at the end of the day. They dread coming in at 9 o'clock and they can't wait to go home at 5. You know the type I'm talking about. If you're lucky, they'll leave on their own. One of our clients told us how relieved he was when an underachieving employee told him he was going to the restroom and just never returned. That manager lucked out. But the unfortunate truth is that most poor performers do return again and again and again. Still, the question we managers have to ask ourselves is, who should we be spending most of our time with? Our top performers, our average performers, or our poor performers? The real question you should ask yourself is, who among them is coachable? Who's truly interested in improving? Who has the flexibility, the openness, the self-awareness, and the desire to change? That's who coaching will stick to. Regardless of where they are now, if they're truly interested in reaching out to others and reaching into themselves, then they can change. Given the three choices, the top, average, and poor performers, I would strongly advise spending most of your time with your top performers. Essentially, as managers, we have to ask ourselves, if I'm spending most of my time with poor performers who aren't really interested in changing, what's the best I can hope for? To bring my worst employees up to being barely average at best? Spend less time with your poor performers and more time with your best employees and those who are striving to get there, the ones who show a willingness to grow. That's where your coaching will stick, because they want to hear from you. Focus on the people you want to stay, the ones who, if they left, it would be like a kick in your stomach. Your attention will keep them engaged, knowing they're valued, and they'll be much less likely to look for greener pastures. Now, in a landmark study published in the Harvard Business Review in 1964, Herb Greenberg, the founder and chief executive officer of Caliper, identified the qualities that distinguish top performers. Ultimately, Herb found that when our inherent strengths are matched to what we're doing, then our potential can be realized. Herb evolved this concept into a way of assessing the potential of applicants and employees, and now thousands of companies around the world turn to us to help them hire and develop top performers. We asked over 200 presidents of companies, what are the key qualities you would like all of your employees to possess? One of the top answers was optimism, and this quality we have found is essential to succeeding and to coaching people to succeed. The message in terms of hiring and coaching people who are consumed with succeeding is to look for optimists and avoid the pessimists. Don't focus on your or an employee's weaknesses. Instead, focus on your strengths, on yours and their potential, on what you and they can become, and magnify that. Turn up the volume on that potential. That's what you want to know. That's why there's always an image of flowers on a package of seeds. We don't really care what the seeds look like. We want to know what they'll become. If I could leave you with one last thought, it would be this. Open yourself to uncovering and coaching the potential of individuals. We have found that the real winners in this world are those individuals who know who they are and they know how to play to their strengths. And they are willing to take a risk on someone else's potential. Find that in yourself. Look for it in others, and you will be well on your way to surrounding yourself with top performers. I've enjoyed sharing this with you today. I am Patrick Sweeney, the Executive Vice President of Caliper. This is CTN. Thank you for watching.
CTN, the Energy Network.